Let me tell you something that almost nobody in the financial world wants to say out loud. Right now, there are millions of Americans sitting on $500,000 in savings, and they genuinely believe they are ready to retire. They have worked 30, 40 years for this number. They have watched it grow. They have told their spouse, their kids, maybe even their coworkers, and they are wrong. Not slightly wrong, but dangerously, catastrophically wrong in ways that could leave them completely broke inside of 12 years. And the scariest part? The math looks fine on the surface. That is exactly the trap. Welcome to Money Insight. This channel exists for one reason: to tell you the truth about money that most financial advisors and banks are too careful to say. If that matters to you, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because what we are covering today could be the difference between a dignified retirement and one of the most financially painful experiences of your life. But here's where things get dangerous. Most people never question the number. They set a goal, they hit it, they feel safe, and that feeling of safety is precisely when the financial system starts quietly working against them. Let us start with what most people assume. The standard retirement advice you have heard 100 times is the 4% rule. You save $500,000, you withdraw 4% per year, and you get $20,000 annually to live on. Forever, supposedly. It sounds logical, it sounds mathematical, it sounds like something a professional told you, so it must be right. That alone would be bad enough, but it gets worse. The 4% rule was designed in 1994. It was built around market conditions, interest rates, and inflation levels that no longer exist, and it assumed a 30-year retirement. But Americans today are living longer than ever. The average 65-year-old man now lives past 84. Women live even longer. A significant portion of retirees will reach their 90s. So a 30-year safety model now needs to stretch 35, maybe 40 years, and the math breaks down almost immediately when you stretch it. But even at face value, $20,000 per year is not retirement income. That is poverty. The federal poverty line for a single adult is $15,060. $20,000 barely clears that bar. And that is before you account for a single meaningful expense. Healthcare alone in retirement averages over $315,000 per couple, according to Fidelity. That is not a typo. $315,000. And that figure does not even include long-term care or assisted living. So you have $500,000. You spend the first 30% of it just staying medically functional. You have $350,000 left before you have bought a single meal or filled a single gas tank. Does that feel like retirement to you? Now let us talk about the thing quietly destroying more retirement savings than any market crash. And most people are not even tracking it. That thing is inflation. And what inflation does to a retirement account is different from what it does to your paycheck. When you are working, inflation hurts, but your income adjusts. When you are retired and living off a fixed pool of savings, inflation does not just hurt. It silently, irreversibly destroys the value of every dollar you have saved. Here is what that looks like in real numbers. If inflation runs at just 3% per year, below the long-term historical average, a retiree who needs $4,000 a month today will need $5,375 a month in 15 years just to maintain the same lifestyle. That is $1,275 more every single month. Over a year, that is $6,500 in extra spending just to stay even. And most conservative retirement portfolios return 4 to 6% annually. Subtract 3% inflation, and your real return barely treads water. That is $400, $500, $600 disappearing from your buying power every single month. Silently, without a single bad investment decision on your part. Over 20 years, that becomes a six-figure hole that most people never saw coming. But here's what nobody is talking about. This crisis is not just a math problem. It is a psychological trap the financial industry has been quietly setting for decades. You get told a number, you chase it, you hit it, and then a switch flips in your brain. You feel done. You stop being aggressive. You stop updating your strategy for the economy you're actually living in. The financial industry benefits from this. Managed accounts, annuities, retirement funds. They all do better when you feel comfortable enough to leave your money parked and stop asking questions. The myth of the magic number serves them well. It does not serve you. Most people never see this part coming. The moment you feel financially safe is often the moment you become the most financially vulnerable. Let me bring this to life because I want you to feel this, not just understand it. Meet Robert. He is 63 years old. He spent 35 years in manufacturing management. He saved aggressively and built up $520,000 in his 401k and IRA. His home is paid off. He and his wife Linda expect $2,400 per month from Social Security, but only once Robert turns 67. That is 4 years away. Robert looks at $520,000, sees that incoming Social Security, and decides he is ready. He retires at 63. His financial advisor sets him up with a 4% annual withdrawal. Well, that was $730 per month from savings. Now let us run the real numbers. Their monthly expenses, utilities, groceries, 2 modest cars, basic travel and out-of-pocket health care for 2 people in their early 60s who are not yet on Medicare, come in at about $5,200 a month. That is not lavish. That is just being alive in America. They have $1,233 coming from savings. The remaining $3,167 every month comes from where exactly? From liquidating other savings, from Robert picking up part-time work he thought he was done with, from cutting the retirement they planned down to something that barely resembles it. And Social Security does not kick in for 4 more years. During those 4 years, Robert and Linda will spend down roughly $85,000 to $100,000 from their portfolio just to survive. By the time Social Security arrives, that money is gone. Not invested, not growing, spent. That sounds good on paper. $520,000 sounds like a lot until you run the math. Now here's another layer almost nobody talks about. Taxes. When people think about their retirement savings, they think about the total balance, $500,000. But a significant portion of Americans have that money sitting in traditional 401k plans or IRAs, and it has never been taxed. Every dollar went in pre-tax. Every dollar of growth was deferred. The government has been patiently waiting for you to retire so they can finally collect. Required minimum distributions kick in at age 73. The IRS requires you to withdraw a specific percentage every single year, whether you need the money or not. And those withdrawals are taxed as ordinary income, on top of Social Security, on top of any other income you have. For many retirees, this combination pushes them into a tax bracket they never expected. It can cause up to 85% of their Social Security benefits to become taxable as well. So that $500,000 in a traditional 401k, after taxes are accounted for over time, it might only be worth $350,000 to $420,000 in real spending power. That gap, $80,000 to $150,000, is often the difference between retiring comfortably and watching the plan fall apart inside of a decade. This changes everything about the real number you need. And then there is sequence of returns risk, the hidden killer that most people never hear about until it is too late. The concept is simple. The order in which your investment returns arrive matters enormously when you are withdrawing money. Here is the scenario. You retire with $500,000. In your first 2 years, the market drops 30%, which happened in 2001, in 2008, and in early 2020. Your portfolio falls to $350,000. You are still withdrawing living expenses. You are selling shares at the worst possible time, at the lowest prices, and those shares never come back. Even when the market recovers, you have fewer shares to recover with. Research shows that if you retire at the beginning of a bear market and continue withdrawing at 4%, there is a meaningful probability your money runs out 15 to 18 years into retirement, well before the average retiree dies. And the cruel irony is this: if the exact same market performance happened in reverse, good years first and bad years later, the portfolio survives almost indefinitely. Same returns, different order, completely opposite outcome, and you have no control over which one you get. Let us talk about healthcare one more time, because the numbers are genuinely hard to accept, which is why most people just ignore them and hope for the best. The national median cost for a private room in a nursing home is approximately $116,000 per year. Home health aid services run $27 to $35 per hour. Assisted living communities average $5,500 per month nationally, and in high-cost states, that nearly doubles. 70% of Americans who reach 65 will need some form of long-term care. Not some people, 70%. The average duration is about 3 years. 3 years of nursing home care at $116,000 annually is $348,000. That is more than 2/3 of a $500,000 retirement account, gone, on a single healthcare event that the majority of retirees will face. And most people assume Medicare covers it. Medicare does not cover long-term custodial care. Medicaid does, but only after you have spent down nearly everything you own. So the safety net catches you only after you are already broke. Most people with $500,000 walk straight into this trap because nobody explained the real rules. Now let us talk about what actually changes the picture, because this cannot just be a list of problems without a path forward. The single most powerful thing you can do if you have $500,000 and are not yet retired is recalibrate your timeline. Working 2 or 3 additional years, even part-time, does something extraordinary. You're not withdrawing from the portfolio, so it keeps growing. You may still be contributing. You can delay Social Security and lock in a higher permanent benefit. You shorten the runway your money needs to cover. Financial research shows that working even 1 additional year in your early 60s has nearly the same impact on retirement security as saving an additional $100,000 before you retire. 1 year, That trade-off is available to almost anyone. Second, if you have large traditional 401k or IRA balances, Roth conversions deserve serious attention. Converting a portion of your pre-tax savings to a Roth IRA in the years before RMDs begin, when your income is lower, can dramatically reduce your future tax burden. You pay taxes now at a potentially lower rate instead of paying them later when RMDs push you into a higher bracket. This is the planning that separates people who feel prosperous in retirement from people who feel perpetually squeezed. Most people never do it. Third, think seriously about where you retire. The cost difference between a high-tax, high-cost state and a more affordable one can be 40 to 60% of your annual spending. At $60,000 per year, that is $24,000 to $36,000 in annual savings from your zip code alone. Over 20 years, choosing the right state could preserve $400,000 to $700,000 in your portfolio compared to staying somewhere expensive. That is not a small adjustment. That is the difference between running out of money and leaving something behind. And finally, supplemental income in the first 5 to 7 years of retirement changes everything. If you can generate even $1,500 to $2,000 a month through part-time work, consulting, or rental income, your portfolio withdrawal drops dramatically. A $500,000 portfolio that sits untouched for 5 years at a modest 6% annual return grows to approximately $670,000. You have created $170,000 in additional retirement wealth without saving a single extra dollar. Most people never run this calculation because they think of retirement as a hard stop. The most financially secure retirees think of it as a transition. Here's the final truth, and I want you to sit with it. The retirement crisis in America is not an accident. The three-legged stool of retirement, personal savings, employer pensions, and Social Security, has had 2 legs knocked out. Pensions have nearly vanished from the private sector. Social Security faces a projected funding shortfall within the next decade unless Congress acts. And personal savings have been made genuinely harder by stagnant wages, housing costs, student debt, and an economic environment that asked more from workers while giving them less runway to save. None of this is your fault, but it is your problem, because the system is not going to fix itself on your timeline. $500,000 is not nothing. For most Americans, it represents decades of discipline and sacrifice. It deserves real respect. But in this economy, with the inflation we have experienced, the healthcare costs we face, the tax obligations inside those pre-tax accounts, and the longevity we may live, $500,000 is the starting point of a real retirement plan, not the destination. The people who come through the next 20, 30 years financially intact are not the ones with the most money. They are the ones who looked at the real numbers honestly, updated their plan when the world changed, and built income and assets that do not depend on a single account or a single assumption. That is the work. And the gap between where most people think they stand and where they actually stand is wide enough that closing it requires time. And time is the one thing that does not replenish. If this video changed how you see your retirement number, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Where are you right now in your retirement journey? Have these numbers changed how you are thinking? Your answer might help someone else who is quietly going through the same thing. If this was valuable, a like takes 2 seconds, and it helps this kind of honest financial content reach more people who need it. Subscribe and stay close to this channel, because next we are going to cover the specific strategies for people who got a late start, need to close a gap fast, or simply refuse to compromise on the retirement they actually want. The math is workable, but only if you know what you are really working with. That conversation continues next time on Money Insight. Money Insight, built for people who take their financial future seriously. Share,